Hi there, Phil Rogers, Lauren Hall here from 𝘄𝗲𝗽𝗍 for our weekly wrap. Party shirt Friday.
Yes.
Clearly, I was the only one that got the memo. I made that up this morning and told no one. But it's all right, you can do that when you're the boss. And the sun came out. We haven't seen the sun for what feels like
another day in paradise.
Weeks. So very tropical. But yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So another big week. A few things we wanted to run through. Interesting, we've seen interest rates move for the first time, probably in a very upwards, in particular in the fixed market, but just really interesting. We want to sort of bring that up and talk a little bit about it. So we had seen some, massive movements over the last few months and 12 months in particular, but around that fixed piece, and it just kept getting lower and lower, and the 2 and the 3 and then the 4 year at 1.99, which was sort of the buzz over the last few months. We've finally seen that 4 year margin come back up. Interestingly, the 4 year went back up to 2.19, but then the 2 and the 3 year for some banks actually went down. I mean, at 2.19%, 18 months ago, pre-COVID, we were high-fiving at 3.99. So, I mean, there's not a level of disappointment around that. But we've also seen what's a little bit unique is when the banks normally come in with that change, it is effective immediately. That day, close the business, they're done. Which this was, but they quickly followed up after a fair bit of pressure. A day or so later with some feedback that they would honour deals in the system. So this is very unique. They gave a cut-off point for deals that were in the system and that were approved and that were yet to settle. They gave sort of, I think it was about a 4-week grace period for those deals to settle with that interest rate. So that's not normal, so I guess, there was a little bit of pressure maybe around what that meant. The other part to that is then just to unpack a little bit about how it normally works with the bank. So you do have an ability to lock in that rate. So we just wanted to remind everyone about what maybe rate lock was. So rate lock is an ability that if you do take out a fixed rate, and this is geared around fixed rates, you can, for the luxury of getting that rate, you can pay a fee to that bank to lock in that rate between now and settlement. So if the rates were to move, in this example, from the 1.99 to 2.19, and you paid that rate lock fee, effectively, if the rate changes anywhere in the lead up to settlement, you were guaranteed that same figure. Now, if the interest rate went down, you still get it, which is exciting, but it's more so about if it did go up. So pretty common there, you'll see one of 2 ways from the banks. One will be a percentage of the loan. So that will be what would be the fee, you ask, because you're all asking at home, no doubt, what is the fee? It would be 0.15% of whatever the loan amount is, or a flat fee some banks do of around $750. So a lot of clients struggle and ask, what do we get for that? Well, it is just to guarantee that rate, especially in a lot of cases where there is a special out or where they've been over the last few years, a lot of pressure around those rates and they weren't moving. And if you've got a loan of 500,000 plus and it starts to move 30-40 basis points,
makes a difference.
Suddenly that fee is well worth it. So they're normally moved by 0.25% on average, so the numbers sort of level out. Some clients will just run the gauntlet, so to speak, or again at 1.99 to 2.19, that's not a disappointed customer, a client. They're still very happy to get money as cheap as they are, but I think it's just relevant and really interesting to watch that. So mindfully, you're taking advantage of those fixed rates at the moment. Maybe reach back out, touch base with your broker. Hopefully it's us. We've probably already rung you, but if not, your bank or your broker, and just understand maybe what that means for your application.
And just also on a side note of that, interesting, obviously the RBA gave some commitment around keeping the cash rate low to keep funding or the cost of funding as cheap as possible, but just understanding that's only one factor that comes into play when the banks are determining rates. So we're seeing banks shift depending on their appetite and what their books look like. So they're still cheap and still low, but the RBA cash rate, I suppose, or their commitment is only one factor in how the banks determine their interest rates.
And when the RBA says that, does it mean anything to the banks? Maybe not. But so it's still super cheap, but interesting that we're seeing those movements in short and long-term fixed rates. Other one we wanted to talk about was 𝘄𝗲𝗽𝗍 finishing at the end of this month. So a few banks have been a little bit more flexible, I guess, than others around the policies, around whether you're an employee and you've been receiving it or your business have, and can we use it. So we're just finding if there is deals in the system at the moment, if you've had an application, have been pre-approved, and potentially yourself and or your business were receiving it, there may be additional requirements to show that it's stopped, that your income has gone back to the normal level, continued, and it might just be some updated pay slips and stuff. So just conscious again, if you go, oh wow, that's me, or that's something that affects us, definitely jump on the phone and check that one out.
Yeah, cool. I had a case study.
After all Lauren's bad news updates
I've got 30
last
seconds,
week, there was some pressure around a good news story this week.
This is true. So this was just this morning actually, but interesting again, just highlighting around interest rates. We're still seeing clients that are paying well above what is a market leading rate. So we're talking about a small increase to maybe a 2.19. This morning, I'm seeing clients that are still sitting at 3.67 on owner occupied and investment lending with another bank. So with one of the majors, so being able to refinance that, we're looking at 2.19 for these guys, a fixed and a variable. Massive savings for them on their loans, about $430,000. So it works out about $530 a month back in their pocket. So awesome.
Crazy. That's a client. That's for the average client. That might be their car loan payment. Per month. You double down on that.
100%.
Huge numbers.
So it's just crazy that there are people out there that are still paying these kind of rates because they're not having a look on their internet banking, or it feels like it's maybe too hard. But there's some serious cash savings in there. So it's always well worth checking and making sure you're getting the best deal.
Cool. Definitely. And good of Lauren to bring a good news story to the table.
Full of good news stories.
Full of good news. So short week next week, lead up to Easter. Banks are still in a really tight position around that, so be really mindful of timeframes. If you're signing contracts, don't forget about the public holidays. So, we'll reach out prior to that and say hello before the long weekend. Bye for now.
Bye.
Cheers.